Today marks International Holocaust Remembrance Day, which honors the 6 million Jewish victims of the Holocaust, as well as the millions of other victims of Nazi persecution. The United Nations General Assembly chose this day, January 27th, to commemorate the anniversary of the liberation of the Auschwitz death camp. And joining us now for more on this day and on this subject, the CEO of the Anti-Defamation League and author of It Could Happen Here, Jonathan Greenblatt. Thanks so much for being here on this day, on this important day, Jonathan.
Thank you for having me, Terry.
So a recent ADL study that we saw on anti-Semitism in the U.S. found 2,100 acts of assault and vandalism and harassment in 2021. That's an increase of 12%. You say over the previous year. As we mark this Holocaust Remembrance Day, where we look to that dark chapter of the past, how's the rise in anti-Semitism in today's present day affecting the Jewish community here, and why do you think things are getting so bad?
Well, I think there are a few reasons why it's getting bad, and this is the right day to be talking about it on this solemn anniversary, the 77th anniversary of the liberation of the Auschwitz death camp. I think, number one, we have public figures, elected officials and public personalities who feel, liberated, if you will, to use references to the Holocaust and make kind of false comparisons and draw analogies in ways that are very problematic. So from the exaggerations as if Dr. Fauci were Dr. Mengele, or when a congressman from Ohio claims that having to show proof of a vaccine to make a reservation in a restaurant somehow is related to the Nuremberg laws, or when an activist like Robert Kennedy Jr., an anti-vaxxer, compares his own situation to that of Anne Frank. As survivors pass on and as memory fades, we see this political use of the Holocaust in really ugly ways. And so again, around COVID comparisons, we have other critics of the Jewish state who accuse Israel of being like the Nazi regime or committing genocide, things that couldn't be more offensive. So again, I think the Holocaust has become a political weapon for many, number one. I think number two, Terry, we've just got to acknowledge that social media has now become the on-ramp for so many people for extremism and hate. And you can find extraordinary, horrifying examples of Holocaust denialism and just abject anti-Semitism all over Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and all these platforms. I mean, the kind of content that could never find its way onto ABC News is almost, passed intravenously into billions of users every day because of social media.
That's a great point. The anti-social media, that part of social media that is in large part anti-social, and your point about politicians and others, just in some ways it's pathetic, cheapening the horror and the suffering and dishonoring the victims by just deploying it for things like, I don't want to get my vaccine shot. I want to ask about another small sign, but a sign of something perhaps. Earlier this month, the Tennessee School Board banned the Pulitzer Prize-winning novel Maus, the graphic novel penned by author Art Spiegelman, which deals with the Holocaust. They banned it from an 8th grade language arts class. They didn't like it. They had concerns, they said, about profanity and one image of female nudity in the graphic novel. One of the board members down there, Mike Cochran, he pushed for the move saying, quote, "We don't need this stuff to teach kids history." What do you make of that?
I mean, it is altogether appalling that a cartoon of this sort, which, by the way, was the first graphic novel to win a Pulitzer Prize, which is considered a masterpiece for its brilliant depiction of the dehumanization of Jews, and indeed is a true story, not some piece of fiction, would be banned, a book banning, if you will, which is a technique that the Nazis themselves used to control thought and to, manage the population. I mean, it's really quite stunning, Terry, that in this day, in this age, when we know that past is prologue, when we know that people are bound to repeat the histories of the past if they don't learn from them, banning a book in this way, it's robbing our young people of knowledge. And it truly matters. There was a Pew study in 2020 that found that more than 50% of Americans literally don't know that 6 million people were killed in the Shoah. I mean, this was a singular evil in the annals of human history. There's never been anything quite like it, the transnational extermination of a single group of people. And so to imagine that a school board, and by the way, Terry, I believe that school boards and parents should be involved in determining the curriculum for their kids. But come on, you need some boundaries that are basically routed by common sense and decency. And this is a deeply indecent thing to do.
And children do need to learn about this. Not little ones, but I've got a fourth grader and second grader and kindergartner and a 25-year-old. I'm an older dad, second time around. But I think about them learning about this. I remember myself probably around fourth or fifth grade reading Elie Wiesel's Night. And just the incredibly piercing, penetrating, proper sorrow that I was filled with. It cast a light on human nature and on human history as well. How should kids learn? Because parents are understanding, we don't want to teach our kids all this darkness, all this awfulness. Why do they have to really be confronted with it? Let's tell them about it. We don't need Art Spiegelman driving it home deep into their heart. We don't need Elie Wiesel to do that. Let's just tell them about it. How should it be taught?
I mean, I will acknowledge that I'm not a professional educator, but like in every story from the Bible to today, you need darkness and to understand the light. And in a moment when, as you were saying in the beginning of this piece, when we see hate on the rise, and we see anti-Semitism growing in these United States. We're looking at, Terry, nearly double the number of incidents today than we had just 5 years ago. And it's anti-Semitism in America and around the world. And we know other forms of intolerance, too, indeed, are being, again, amplified on social media and expanded by extremists. So let's be honest with ourselves. If we want to halt the rise of hate, we've got to learn our common history. And this isn't like the 1619 Project, which I know is a source of controversy for some. These are masterpieces which were written by people who were there. It is documented, undeniable facts. And so I find this, again, really quite galling, especially, Terry, because the data tells us that young people who learn about the Holocaust, and we've seen this with ADL's own Holocaust education programs, once you learn about the Holocaust, you are more likely to have a higher degree of appreciation for pluralism and tolerance. Literally, education is the antidote to ignorance, whether it's about the Holocaust or any other issue. And so we are doing our kids a disservice when we don't give them the facts as they were.
Absolutely. As the philosopher said, those who do not remember the past are condemned to repeat it. Jonathan Greenblatt, CEO of the Anti-Defamation League and author of It Could Happen Here, a story about why America is tipping from hate to the unthinkable and how we can stop it. Thank you for being with us on this International Remembrance of the Holocaust.
Thanks for having me.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.